All right, I'm getting green bars across the top there telling me that the stream has connected, and I think I'm getting a go symbol here saying that that is ready as well. Okay, check, check, test, test. Looking good, looking good. Alrighty. So I'm a little early for this evening, so I'll let a few people join. It's about 2 minutes till I said I was going to start. And today is a philosophy lesson or a mythology lesson, yoga beyond the poses, and what it means for your practice and how you can develop a deeper sense of awareness of the poses when you understand why they are called something and the purpose behind the mythology. So let's just take a moment to find a comfortable seat. Your personal practice tonight won't be particularly vibrant because we'll do a little bit of talking and I will show you the pose in my body and explain to you what the pose alignment cues are and how you can work with them in your body. And then from that, I might take some questions if anyone's interested in that. But let's just take a moment to find our comfortable seat and cross your legs and place your hands on your knees. Just arrive in your space. The world is a 24-hour existence now, so it could be any time, anywhere that someone's tuning in. So without me putting a notion of evening, morning, or afternoon, or midday on it, just remind yourself that be thankful for the ability to connect like this across the universe, so to speak, and allowing us to feel the interconnected nature that yoga actually suggests. There is no boundaries, there is no delineation on a map, it's all one. And then just take your moment to bring your hands to the heart space in Namaskar Mudra, and we'll start our practice with an Om. Inhale through the nose. So take your hands down onto your knees and take a moment just to integrate the sensations that might have come up through our Om. So tonight is kind of like a philosophy slash mythology slash a discussion where I will take questions and I'll be part of the experience in hearing from you as well. But one of the iconic poses of the yoga tradition, of the series of poses, is known as Warrior 1, 2, and 3, Virabhadrasana. And within those poses, you hear the word warrior, and I think sometimes students might even come across this concept of like, why would we talk about something like a warrior when we're in this poses called yoga and it's all about sort of love and thankfulness and kindness, but yet these poses sound so like violent. You know, warrior, why is it called warrior? Well, it's a good one to ask and a good one to inquire on, and it's something I do love to talk about, as the mythology of the yoga tradition is very rich and very interesting. And within the mythology of the yoga tradition, it's also linked with the Hindu tradition, and there's an incredible amount of crossover. So I'm not here to tell you that the story that I'm about to tell you is the be all and end all. There is very many interpretations and different understandings. So, warrior poses, Virabhadrasanas. Who was Virabhadra and why are we talking about it in our yoga classes? Virabhadra is the incarnation of Shiva. It's a fearsome incarnation of Shiva. It is incredibly voluminous and it is a destroyer. So it's something to be feared. So wow, why do I want to do these poses? Why am I doing warrior too, and knowing that Virabhadra is this incredibly fearsome incarnation of one of the Trimurti of gods, the Shiva, known as the Destroyer. Okay, so we have to backtrack a little bit for the mythology and the story. Now, Virabhadra is, I beg your pardon, Shiva is married to Sati. Well, they're engaged. They're kind of living together. And in the period of when this is all happening, a Indian tradition was that the wife didn't really get to choose their partner. The fathers would often put together these lavish parties, and there was this process of a ring being placed over their shoulders, and the choice was made, and blah, blah, blah. So it comes down to some of those stories as well. And the reason why Daksha, Sita's father, doesn't agree with her choice of Shiva as her partner is because Shiva is the god of destruction. Shiva walks around naked. He has ash smeared all over him. He spends his entire days in burial grounds. He befriends the oddballs, the curious, the weirdos, right? And he has matted hair, and he's very imposing, and meditates for a very long time. So Daksha doesn't think that Shiva is the correct choice for Sita, and he tells her so. And so Sati is very upset by this, and because she's so devoted to Shiva, she knows that through this process bad things are going to happen, because clearly the father will not change his mind, and it stays in that realm of behind the scenes. They stay together until one day the father decides to throw the ceremony, a yagna, and invites all of the glitterati of his kingdom, and especially all of the eligible bachelors, all of the men, to come along to the ceremony in the hope that he will be able to choose his daughter's husband and the correct one for her. And when Sati hears about this yagna being prepared, she's insulted because they weren't invited, Shiva and Sati, and therefore, knowing that paternal nature of daughter-father relationship, she decides to go anyway, because she thinks, I can mend this relationship, I can make it better, and then eventually my choice of husband being Shiva will be okay with my father. So we get, the scene is set now. The big yagna is all glamorous. The Daksha, of course, was a king. I may not have mentioned that. Sati is his daughter. She's a goddess, very powerful goddess as well. And there they are. She walks in, and all of the eligible bachelors are there. All of the people are there. It's a big, big party. And upon arrival, her father insults Shiva in front of everybody and makes a mockery of him, which completely and utterly hurts Sati so much internally that through her yogic powers, she instantly combusts and becomes dust on the floor, ash, right? So that is this, well, she doesn't become dust, but she dies, and she's actually left there on the floor. That is felt through the universe by Shiva. Shiva is aware of this. He is understands this through the nature of the connected world in which he can meditate in, and he pulls out one of his matted hair and shoves it in the ground, which burrows its way through the earth to the yagna. Okay, so he's up in Mount Kailash meditating at the time because he wasn't invited to the party, and in this moment he evokes his horrible version of himself, this incredibly powerful incarnation known as Virabhadra. And he burrows through the earth. So this is where it comes into the mythology of the poses. So here we go. Virabhadra is burrowing through the earth. And in order to burrow through the earth, the hands go into like a namaskar mudra. And he starts to channel all his way. And eventually he emerges at the yagna, right in front of Daksha, out of the ground. Now, how do you think you would emerge out of the ground, if you've been burrowing through it, well, you emerge something like so, with the hands overhead, and you come out of the earth like this, right? And so this is called Virabhadra I, or Warrior One. So it's the first part of the equation when we're thinking about our warrior poses and how they relate to the mythology and why Virabhadra's name is there. So he's burrowed out of the earth and come out like so. Now, when we think about our alignment, you've got a front foot here planted on the mat, but it's the back foot where people get interested. It's a 45-degree angle of the back foot, and I like to widen the stance of my feet to give me more stability here. So Warrior One, Virabhadra, we've emerged from the ground just like Shiva does in his incarnation as Virabhadra. What makes this also very potent is this idea that he has managed to do this on a whim. It has happened instantly. He's heard about Sati dying of embarrassment, of sadness, of insult, and he's emerged like that. It's lightning, right? And so what's now presented to Daksha is this incredibly imposing version of Shiva, and it's Virabhadra. Virabhadra takes no prisoners. So what happens now is certainly not PG rated. It is not a yogic, particularly yogic story. It is death and destruction on a terrible scale. Everybody at the yagna is targeted as a victim. They might be killed, they might be slaughtered. There's all sorts of other beasts that come into the equation. And of course, Daksha, the father of Sita, is standing right there in front of Shiva as he's emerged as Warrior One pose, Virabhadra. So now what do we think is going to happen? Well, the next pose we know is Virabhadrasana II, or Warrior Two. And sometimes you even hear a cue from a teacher, particularly myself, such as slice the air open. Well, what's that suggesting to you? Yeah, we've got the warrior poses, and we know now that Virabhadra is a fearsome incarnation of Shiva. So we've got our front foot forward at our 12 o'clock position. Our back foot is 45-degree angle. Our Warrior One pose looks like this. Warrior Two, as we slice the air open and dance the feet into our shape, you think of this idea that this hand comes forward like so. So I'm going to jump into the pose on this angle, and you can see me from Warrior One to Warrior Two. And Warrior Two is an expression of back foot parallel with short edge of mat, front foot 12 o'clock, and that front heel runs in alignment to the front arch. We ground down from the pelvis through the feet, and we expand out through the fingers and slice the air open. So now we've emerged from Warrior One into Warrior Two. And in that process of slicing the air open, Daksha, the king, the father of Sita, has his head cut off. So as I said, these are not PG stories. These are quite vibrant and disturbing, but there is a story, there is a moral here. I'll get to that. So we've had Warrior One, Warrior Two pose, and now we know that some terrible destruction has occurred as a result of being humiliated, upset, all of these aspects of what happened to Sita. And Daksha has his head amputated, he's left there lifeless on the floor. And it actually now occurs that Shiva, as his incarnation as Virabhadra, recognizes his own compassion, and in the process, the last of the poses unfolds, and that is Warrior Three. And Warrior Three goes from our Warrior Two into our Warrior Three, and it's a balancing pose where we shift onto one leg, we lift the back leg, and essentially we're doing something like this to help us balance, and then we lift the arms up and extend the arms forward. I'm just going to step back so I can do that. So we go from warrior 2 to warrior 3, where we shift, balancing here. We pick an object up and then we reach forward and we hold the position like so. So warrior 1, 2, and 3, all of the Virabhadras. And I think here that gets a little bit spicy, because actually what that process is Virabhadra picking up Daksha's head and placing it on a stake. So it is incredibly violent. It is incredibly bad. It is incredibly sad. It's very deep and horrifying what happens here. Warrior 3. Okay, so what am I getting to? Why is this interesting? Personally, for me, I find these kind of stories really interesting as to how I can break down the mythology and incorporate it into my own practice. So Shiva now turns up and he recognizes, holy smokes, this has gotten out of hand. This is all too much. There's dead people everywhere. There's slaughter. There's all of the omens that happen. The sky's black and it's fire everywhere. And he's like, wow. So he reabsorbs Virabhadra, because he's like, well, that cat got out of the bag and went a little bit crazy. Let's absorb that now and continue to understand what's happened here. So he can actually do something about Daksha, and he does do something about Daksha. He places a goat's head on top of Daksha's lifeless body and allows him to reincarnate. But sadly, his wife Sita cannot be revived. And so this then leads to the very, very incredibly beautiful story of the Shakti Pithas that are located all around India. And I've had the pleasure of going to one myself, not far from Rishikesh, because her body is said to, as Shiva, in his complete and utter distraught state, picks up his wife and flies through the sky with her. The really sad part of the story is parts of her start to fall away and land in certain places. I can't remember the exact number of them, but there is a number of them, and they're all the way through till he gets back to Mount Kailash. And in just outside of Rishikesh, there is this incredibly beautiful space where you can actually go and see one of the holy spots where her parts of her body had landed. And also it's this incredibly beautiful place to see the sunrise over the Himalayas. So it's not only this amazing experience of grief and compassion, a site of great reverence, but also a site that is incredibly inspirational. So what is all this about? Why is Warrior 2, Warrior 1, Warrior 3 so violent? Like, why do we talk about it? Well, I think it's a reminder that Shiva, for example, one of the Trimurti of gods that are recognized within the tradition of yoga and within the tradition of Hinduism, he is so divine, yet he manages to make mistakes. He makes a dreadful mistake in this experience with the yagna and the father of Sati, and then the reincarnation of him. And I think it's a reminder that even gods can stuff up, right? So when we make mistakes, when we do things that are stupid or incorrect, it is a reminder that, yes, things don't always happen for the right reason, but destruction as a result of these decisions can be transformative as well. There is always some element to that. So it's about remembering the necessity for destruction, remembering the necessity for impermanence in our own lives and our own practice, to remind us that the ego must sometimes be humbled, right? So Daksha, once he is reincarnated with this goat's head, it's a reminder that to him that he should have been more humble. He should have also recognized the gifts within Shiva that should have allowed him to marry Sati and them to have a happy life together. And so therefore the warrior poses, the Virabhadras of the world, these poses are not only physical poses, but they also place upon us this ability to tap into some deep wisdom So this deep inner story, this deep inner sense of purpose and of transformation. So warrior 1, 2, and 3, Virabhadra 1, 2, and 3 are all references to the fearsome, scary, incredible side of Shiva that emerges as a moment of sheer frustration and anger. And it's a reminder that even gods make mistakes. Even these divine, incredible creatures make mistakes. So when we make them, it's sometimes just part of life, and we need to remind ourselves of how do we let go from that, how do we move on, and how do we allow ourselves to lighten the load. So that was tonight's little story of Virabhadra, being the warrior 1, 2, and 3 poses, and a few little alignment cues. And I hope you found that informative and interesting, and let me know how you went, and I'll catch you again real soon tomorrow morning for an actual yoga practice and some Kundalini yoga as well. So if you've got any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you again real soon. Bye for now. Thanks, Kat. One of my favorite aspects of teaching yoga is to talk about the mythology of the poses and why they are so interesting. So, yeah, thank you.